Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone here in this forum. Welcome to this exciting series of PMI, PMP exam preparation session. Thanks to all of you for taking time and being with us today. My name is Deb, and I will be the co-host for this call along with Maureen and Amrali. We will be recording this session for the benefit of all others who could not join this session. So please ensure that you yourself, you keep yourself muted. For any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in your chat box. Amrali and Maureen will try to answer them in the meantime. Or you guys can always unmute yourself at the end of this call for a better interaction. So today's session is actually we will be covering one of the enablers of the task lead a team under the people domain. At the end of this session, we will also we plan to go through few mock questions and related strategies on how to attempt the questions. So as always, like I request you to please subscribe to our channel. We will be recording this, and this recording will be available in our YouTube channel. So and also we are uploading new videos throughout the week. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. So it will be helpful. Like it's all related to tips, critical pointers, strategies, and all. So don't forget to put your comments, thoughts in those YouTube channel as part of your reviews. In this session, this session is actually aimed at as a quick revision. Like in case if you plan to, before you get started with your detailed dive in of the content, you can use this as one of the quick refresher or a quick highlight as to see what exactly the points or topics that you should be covering when you go through that topic of lead a team. Or you can also use this as a quick revision just 1 day or 2 days before your actual exam. So we will try to cover few highlights, few features, important points that you should be remembering across the topic while you are attempting the questions. So again, I request you to please refer to the PM book as your guide, as your reference for any kind of details or clarity. So again, like this, please use this session, this notes as a quick refresher, only to supplement your preparation, not to avoid your studies actually. But yes, let's get started to get into more detail. In our last session, we did see that like this is one of the people's domain. We have almost 14 tasks, and one of the tasks is lead a team. And we did look at how actually each of these tasks in the new format actually relates to the knowledge area of the PM book, right? And like in case if you missed that session or you did not, you could not join that recording, that session, we have the recording in our YouTube channel. And please go through that recording, and that will definitely help you to understand how to plan your activities, how to correlate these topics, and how to get started with your preparation. uh, in today's session, we will be actually going through this specific enabler, set clear vision and mission. So this enabler is actually part of the leader team, and we will be talking about what exactly is required under this enabler, under this. So what all activities, what are tools and techniques, what are different things that as a project manager you should keep in mind when we are trying to talk about set a clear vision and mission in order to lead a team. So like as you would all agree, like enablers are nothing but like the tools or techniques, right, that help you to achieve this task. So in our case, this task is to lead a team. So like this, before I get into actually the details of this, all these different documents or what tools are, it's very important to understand that like we know the difference between the vision and mission, what exactly they are. So like just as an example, like a vision is nothing but it focuses on tomorrow. It tries to answer like what we are what like why we are trying to do this, like basically vision is more about the future upcoming, how to achieve a particular goal, and mission is more about, it focuses on today, or basically what the organization is currently doing. So in a nutshell, like vision and mission are related in a sense that the vision is actually referring to the vision statement is basically where the company will be in the future if we continue to fulfill our mission activities, our current activities. So how exactly we are going to be at a certain target point. So that actually summarizes like how the vision and mission is critical for any kind of project, as well as for an organization to give a clarity for the whole team, basically to march ahead, to march towards the target point. So with this understanding, we will look at what are the different things that help us to set a clear vision and mission, and thereby helping the whole team and giving them the clarity. So the very first thing which helps us, which is very important actually, which is a really critical document, is actually the project charter. Without this, like again, without getting into too much of detail of this, how it is created, or how what are the relationships with other different processes, we will try to focus on the key attributes, key features, which are actually quite frequently asked in the exam. So again, like it is just a quick refresher. For any details, please refer to the PM book or any other reference guides. So like as a project manager, you need to participate in the development of the project charter, right? So you need to consider, analyze all different informations from all different sources. You need to consider a benefit management plan, the business case, as well as the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. So these are actually quite frequently asked, like these are quite frequently inputs or considerations that are taken into while preparing the project charter. Before we get started with the project charter, business case is always there, which actually validates why this project is relevant for the organization. So that's how this project charter initiation happens. So again, for this EEFs and OPAs, like these are quite frequently asked in exam as well. So you should be clear about the differences, like what are actually considered as EEFs and OPAs. So in a nutshell, like just for example, like if I may say, EEFs are nothing but like the conditions which are outside the project control, right? Just for example, it can be anything related to the brand management or the competition that you may be competitors that you may be facing, or it can be any kind of organizational culture as well. So all these are considered as EEFs, and OPAs are nothing but kind of a repository, or the organization maintains some kind of repository for their reusable purposes or for their any kind of benefit for the upcoming projects. So anything like a lesson learned repository, or documents which are gained from the successful completion of previous projects, they are actually stored in some kind of repository for the company-wide usage, or any kind of just again so you need to basically understand and keep this clarity what exactly these EEFs and OPAs are. Uh, Now coming to the features of this project charter itself, is like the very first thing is what exactly like this with this project charter, you actually like the sponsor actually authorizes the project manager to start the project, like to assign the project resources to the project. Like it is the formal official authority for the project manager to get started with the project and to assign the resources to the project. It links the project to the strategic objective, that is with the business case, what exactly the objective of the organization is, and it holds this project relevant to make it more sensible and to make it more logical for the execution. Again, this is actually the connection point. This project charter is basically the connection point between the business case, the business need, and the project itself. So again, like this are like when you are actually developing this project charter, you are actually identifying the very high level, the key deliverables. What are the key deliverables and how are you going to plan this project itself? So again, you need to consider the assumptions and constraints based on the any kind of EEFs or OPAs. So again, just for example, if there may be a scenario wherein like when you are getting started with the project, the product which you are preparing or you are producing, probably there is a possibility that there is a competitor also in the market, and the timeline when you are going to release this product, that competitor may release this product ahead of you, right? So in that case, the project which you are executing may not hold any relevance. So those kind of assumptions you need to consider, and the constraints. So like again, the competitor releases their product ahead of you, so your project is of no relevance, and then you may need to consider whether you should be closing down the project or whether you need to have some different features in the project. So all those things, all those assumptions you need to clearly come up with in the project charter. So project charter is specifically more at a high level, which gives a directive, which gives for the execution board, which gives more clarity. What are the boundaries where exactly we will be executing this project in a whole? Now, coming to the again, this like as you might have like if you have gone through, if you have started your preparation already, like the business case or the like they actually define they at a very high level they identify the stakeholders. But again, the project charter is actually producing you the key list of stakeholders. From identifying the stakeholder, it actually produces you, gives you the key stakeholder list. So this is actually again gives you very good clarity with all, with who all the stakeholders you need to engage with, and based on that, how are the engagement plans and how exactly to what extent you need to engage with whom. So all those things can be taken up as a subsequent process, as a subsequent step. But again, the foundation is in the project charter itself. So if there is any kind of stakeholder change or addition or removal, then next actually you need to refer to the project charter, where you will be getting the key list, who all are the stakeholders, and how to get engaged with them. Again, because we have already identified the stakeholder list, obviously we will be again having a very high level requirements from them. We will be able to identify at a very high level, and this is basically the foundation which will lead into the further detail down when we are going with the collect requirement processes, or when we are discussing with the business owners about their requirements, and to what extent the scoping will be. So all those things will be taken up later on. But again, over here we are getting a fair amount of idea at a very high level what exactly the stakeholder requirements are. One critical point over here to mention, not to forget, is like obviously during the execution of the project, we will get the different CRs, the change request. We will get request for the change in scope and cost or schedule. But again, the project charter does not get impacted based on the like again. Let's put it this way: the project charter, if there is any kind of change to the project charter, you don't need a CR actually to change the project charter in itself. Like there is a addendum, there is a like you can always have addendum added to it. This is not actually a project deliverable, so you don't need a CR to change the project charter. So you just need to remember all these facts, all these features when you are asked about any question related to the project charter in itself. Moving on to the next critical component for this particular enabler is the project management plan. As a project manager, like you develop a project management plan to document the strategy approaches for managing the project, right? Or to define the scope, schedule, cost, quality, and all those different attributes of a project. So while creating this document, like you are trying to answer the questions is, just for example, how the project will be executed, monitored, controlled, and closed. So all these things are actually getting addressed. So this is just like, just from the name itself, this is a plan, this is just a guidance which we are providing to the team, which we are trying to have arms around as a guidance document, how exactly the project will be executed or will be monitored or uh, will be taken out throughout the process itself. So in order to answer this how question, like we have all these different components in the project management plan. The components like the subsidiary management plan, then baseline documents which are related to the scope, schedule, and cost. Then we have change management plan, configuration management plan, and the scope management plan. One key thing on this related to this project management plan itself is, like, just to remember, like the scope baseline itself is comprised of like approved scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary. So all these three components are form the scope baseline document, and this scope baseline document in itself is a component of the project management plan. So again, like if you need further details of WBS dictionary, what are they, how they are produced, please refer to the PMBOK guide for more further clarity. Next comes the scope management plan. Over here, it is actually like, it is obviously it is very instrumental for the team itself to get the clarity how the scope itself will be managed. It is again a guide, it to provide a guidance to the team how the, like, just for example, how the scope will be defined, developed, monitored, right, controlled throughout the project, how to collect the requirements from the customer, or how to eliminate the conflicting requirements. It will always happen in a project wherein like there are multiple stakeholders, and like one requirement for a particular stakeholder is of utmost priority, but the same requirement may not be of that priority for some other stakeholder. So in such a scenario, how to address those kind of requirement, how to prioritize it, so those kind of mechanism, what tools we will be using in such a conflicting environment, how to track the agreed scope. So all those guidance are actually listed. What kind of tools we will be using throughout the project to help the team with navigating with this kind of requirements, how to verify whether the agreed project deliverables is actually as per the requirement of the stakeholder or not. So these are different guidelines that we actually track under the scope management plan document itself. So, like, just remember that all these are the plan documents. These are definitely we are trying to help the team. Over here we are not producing any kind of list of requirements of scope or any kind of deliverables as such. We are trying to just shape up our planning, our guidance, which will be used throughout the project. And again, these documents can always be revised as and when we are getting more clarity throughout the project. So again, like as you see over here, the dependencies EEFs and OPS again are considered for this guidance for this scope management plan. So like as I mentioned earlier, EEFs and OPS are very important to know the difference, and they are definitely asked in the exam as well. At least 2-3 questions for that. uh, Moving on to the next document, important document is related to the requirement management plan. Like the name suggests, it is all around the requirements, right? So how the requirements will be analyzed, documented, and managed. So how the relevant activities for the requirement activities will be planned, tracked, or reported for the cost analysis perspective, right? For the cost schedule analysis, how the activities are tracking. So all these things again are mentioned, are taken into consideration in the requirement management plan. Now, when we are talking about the requirement management plan, it is actually important to understand it is a bit different from traditional or the predictive approach, and it is different for the agile approach. Now again, this document, obviously, like when we talk about the agile mode, we are talking about the change is almost always welcome. We cannot have the requirement baseline upfront. The requirement needs to be like maturing as we go through the, like it will accept the change as we go through the design phase, through the agile process itself. So like again, on the left we have this predictive approach wherein features is fixed, which is really has to be baseline. We have to like if there is any change, we have to go through the change management process, and features are actually we try to baseline it, and based on that the time and the cost they can change, because as and when we are trying to add CR, add a change request process, we are also impacting the time and cost. So we have to analyze those impacts, how it is impacting the quality, the time and cost in terms of the predictive model, in terms of the waterfall model. But in case of agile, it is totally opposite. Like the agile processes, the sprints or the iterations, they are time boxed, right? So if it is within 4 weeks of a cycle, it is always, it will be 4 weeks. We cannot change it to make it 3 weeks or 2 weeks based on the requirements, or based on any other critical activities. So again, over here, cost and time are fixed, and features are something which are flexible, which are maturing, which are getting added or removed as we go through this whole process. Again, like just a quick note over here, the the feature itself is basically, uh, when we are trying to add the features, we like, depending upon the time period of that whole sprint, it can be either like probably put to the backlog itself for reprioritization or put to a next sprint. So again, it is not necessary that when a new change comes in, it has to be done in the same sprint. Depending upon the how much time is left for that sprint, or depending upon the whole like the team members decision, it can be put into the backlog, or it can be decided that okay, let's move it to the next sprint and we will take it for further refinement. uh, with this, like these are the 3 or 4 different documents, so which actually help uh, while we are trying to build our vision and mission statement. And with this, we actually come to our end, and we will try to attempt some of the few questions which we have actually planned based on the topics that we just covered. You can take a note of these answers probably in a sheet of paper, or you can put it in the chat box itself. And we will try to give 1 minute for each question. You can try to attempt it, and then we can discuss about the strategy or what are the critical points and how to attempt those questions. Uh, for the people who are actually viewing, who may view this recording later, they can just pause the video for 1 minute, and then they can answer the question. I hope you guys are able to attempt this. So over here, before we actually get into the explanation, like we, as a general trend, like we try to understand what are the key terms, what actually the question is asking about when we try to attempt any kind of PMP related exam, right? So like we have discussed few of our strategies and tips how to attempt the questions in our previous recording, in our previous sessions. So please go through those sessions if you have not already. They are really helpful, and we will be using some similar tips and tricks to attempt these questions as well. So over here, like as let's analyze this question itself. As I read this question, I try to identify the keywords. For me, the keywords are, the very first is like the new project, right? The project manager is working on a new project. So definitely it's a new project. And the second key term for me is the gaps are already identified in the previous completed project. project. So with this, like where I'm starting a new project and the gaps are already identified in new project, which gives me a indication that probably I should leverage some my learnings from the previous project itself. And in order to leverage those learnings, I should be referring to the OPAs, the company-wide repository, or the lessons learned document. So the correct answer over here is C, which actually refers to the lessons learned document. Let's move on to the next question. So over here, like if I read this question, I find the keywords as the sponsor recruits a project manager, as well as the second keyword for me is assumptions, right? So again, if I remember clearly, like the during the project initiation or when we start the project charter actually talks about assumptions and the project objectives. So this gives me an indication that probably this is referring to the project charter, and as a project, I first need to understand the project objective before we get actually into the implementation of the project. So over here, the answer is C, like the collaborate with the stakeholder to understand the project objectives. Let's move to the next question. So over here, in this question, for me, the critical items to focus on is like the stakeholder actually complaining about the essential functionality not being addressed, right? And like they are in the acceptance testing process. So like we discussed just a few minutes back, what are the process or what are the documents that help us to verify the deliverables, like if the required functionality is implemented or not. If you remember, it is the scope management plan which actually defines how the scope will be defined and verified. So the correct answer over here is like to have approve a project's management scope management plan. The answer is C. Let's move to the next one more question. This should be a quick question for you guys. Like over here again, we have to. There is no other option. We have to probably remember, like as I mentioned, the scope baseline contains three documents, right? Three components, and this is straight out of that PM book related reference. So if you remember, like the scope baseline document itself contains WBS dictionary and the scope approved scope statement. Then you will be able to identify what exactly the answer is. Answer is here is A, scope management plan. One last question for you guys. So this question actually we did cover at the very beginning of our session today, like what exactly is the project vision, project purpose, project mission. Like if you did listen to it carefully, it would have been it definitely will be an easy one for you. But again, like in case if you missed out, you can always re-listen to the recording again. So again, over here the focus is you need to understand the basic concept of each of these components, like what exactly the vision is, what exactly the release criteria refers to, or does the project purpose contribute to the whole setting of the vision mission statement, or how it helps to lead a team. So with this, actually, we come to an end of our today's session with all these different questions and all. And I hope like this session in itself was a bit interesting, and you were able to take some of the like the takeaways and how to prepare for this PMP exam, like for each of these enablers, what exactly you need to focus on and all. But again, there are many more tips and tricks that like the topic specific knowledge that we can definitely provide. And like in case of any kind of personalized assistance or one-to-one session, like you can always email us to this email ID, to the Gmail ID. And now with this, I will just stop the recording, and we will just take the questions from everyone.